Hey everybody, and welcome back to another RCT2 review. Today we are going to throw it way back in the time machine and look at a park from over 20 years ago. And I am joined by a fellow old school RCT player today. This is Billerica Bay by Xophe. So welcome, sir, to the stream.
Thank you very much. Good to be here after all this time.
I know. So this park came out in 2004, I believe. It was the Vacation Park of the Month on RCT2.com.
It was, yeah, just checked June 2004. So 21 years old, old enough to drink in the
Wow.
US. Can you believe?
It's, it's incredible, isn't it? So, first of all, I will say for anybody who's watching this that has been with the channel for a long time, I've reviewed several of your parks by now, and I've pronounced your name wrong the entire time. And as it turns out, I pronounced your name wrong for the last 20 years. So, for the record, it is Xophe and not
Correct.
Sophie, as I've been saying. So, hopefully that fixes somebody else if you guys are all thinking the same thing. So, anyway, this is a nice park. Even looking back, I say that because I also copied the hell out of it way back in the day, as I was the young and up and coming player as well. But I feel like this one had a lot of really kind of interesting influences and everything. But do you remember what got you going on this one?
Not really. I'd worked on various things. I was very active on RCT2.com back in the day, much more so than New Element. I was a bit of a latecomer to that in relative terms. But yeah, I remember, I mean, this is, as you can see, and again, looking back, that's a lot of path, isn't it? There's quite a mishmash of styles and inspirations here. I mean, this whole section is quite clearly heavily influenced by Rivers of Babylon, including the track colors, the architecture, all of the
I was gonna say
pathing.
you got your arches here, you got the track colors, you got the launch lift hill, but I think everybody was doing that back then. I mean, if
Yeah,
you
that was
weren't
like
ripping off
the
of
up
Ursula
the style.
Lemoria,
Yeah,
right? What were you doing at that point?
exactly, exactly. It's also got the sort of classic early 2000s random jagged rocks and sort of random artifacts scattered over them, which again to the sort of, oh, look at that. Wow. That's natural looking, isn't it? This was very popular at the time.
This was the style of the time.
Yeah.
This was what you did, and for anybody who's watching this, who's come to RCT in the last 10 years, or even since Open has been a thing, or whatever, this is going to be entirely just foreign. But this was the style: is jagged rocks in every direction. It was a random checkerboard of various land textures. It was landscaping so thick you could barely see it, and then random crap in the landscaping like flames and
Yeah,
pots and ruins and whatever else. It's just what you did.
exactly. I like that there's a mixture of sort of natural trees and also mixed in among it there's sort of very manicured topiary bushes. It's like on the top of a mountain.
Of course.
Who is up there trimming
Yeah, you
those?
just send the landscaper in there every once in a while, and he goes and
Yeah.
scales this mountain here, and it's fine. It's all good. But the coaster layout was nice. It turned out good.
Yeah, this is also back in the at the time where everyone was doing like Incredible Hulk rip-offs as well, weren't they? Um, which I guess was a product of its time as well. But I remember being very pleased with this back in the day. I also remember when RCT3 came out, I rebuilt this whole thing in that, which I don't think, I mean, I would have shared screenshots of it on whatever website was the most active for that back in the day. But those files are long gone into the void, so that will never be seen again, which is
That's a
possibly for the
shame.
best.
I actually didn't realize that RCT3 was one that I barely played, but
Mm.
then
It was a bit of a
it,
flash in the pan,
it
wasn't it?
was a
I think
thing
it
for
was.
a while.
Yeah, it didn't have the staying power of this. It now looks very dated.
Yeah, there's definitely some hardcore builders I think that really got into it, and if you use Shy Guy's scenery well, then I think
Mm.
it turned out all right. But I think you're right. The staying power of RCT2 just kind of went with it.
Yeah, it's quite timeless, isn't it? Which is why. it still looks good today. Yeah, this
Classic
this
supports
flying
before we
coaster.
had tunes.
Yeah, exactly. This I'm pretty sure if I remember right, this was built by Metropole. Do you remember Metropole from back in the day?
I
Um,
do. I
I remember
do.
struggling with
Funny
this
enough, we
layout.
were.
Yeah, he offered to kind of step in
Yeah,
and
neat.
rescue this because it was a bit of a mess. So yeah, I'm pretty sure. I may be wrong, but if I remember right, that it was him who provided this one for the park.
Well, perhaps we can get Metropole back himself at some point because you've returned recently after a fairly long hiatus, and turns out that it seems like my channel's gotten some reach, I guess, to some of us old timers, and Metropole was one of those that was shouted out as somebody we would like to see come back. So if
Yeah,
you're
you
out
should work
there,
your magic.
come on back.
Yeah, summon these people back
Yeah.
from back from wherever they've ended up.
Love this tree. I feel like that was another classic thing that a lot of us used to do, but I thought this one was executed quite well. The
With
hanging
little vines
vines.
dangling down. Yeah. Again, I'm not sure how feasible that would
That's cool.
be in real life. They'd probably have stuff sort of whipping you in the face as you got to the front. It would be part of the
Yeah,
experience.
you just make it a little more solid. It's all right.
Yeah,
Of
exactly.
course, here,
I like
giant
those
river
little
rapids rides here.
yeah, with again a sort of random building at the top. I like that. I don't know. I feel like at this time people just sort of built random buildings with very little thought as to what they would be for. Like, do you notice that at the entrance to all of these areas, there's like a massive building that kind of covers up a little crossroads in the path? No idea what they're for. Um, I think nowadays people are a lot more kind of grounded in reality, which is nice. It's and even I don't know, not necessarily even people that want to build something realistic, but stuff tends to have a bit more of a purpose and a bit more kind of intent behind it.
It is interesting, though. I hadn't really noticed it until you mentioned it. That sure enough, this just crossroads and pathway goes right underneath of it. Uh, and it is interesting because I feel like there was such a an emphasis now, especially over sort of pathway that ebbs and flows and grows and
Mm,
shrinks, and even not too long after this one came out, I think that kind of started to get into more of the fashion. But you look at something like this, and you have the big plazas like this, but when it wasn't a big plaza, it was this, where it was
yeah,
three wide, just going from A to B to C to D, and just kind of connecting in a big grid.
exactly. Yeah, things have definitely moved on in the modern age, which is a good thing. But yeah, I'm not sure what all those giant buildings are at the beginning. Maybe like I don't know, little information centers or something. But they're very large. There's one there at the bottom in the sort of
You can always.
futuristic as well. Another giant one. Also covering up a very kind
I
of
do kind of
remote
like that
bit of the
it's.
path.
Well, it's fun to me that it's the same. It's the same sort of idea. It's just skinned in a different way. So, like this one over here is very
Mm,
much the sort of jungle theme, and this one over here is sort of the same deal, but it's just very much this space agey, tech theme.
mm, yeah. I remember being quite pleased with this area. This turned out quite well. Um, Although I think
This
again, heavily inspired. I'm pretty sure, especially the buildings over to the right by that sort of Top Thrill Dragster lookalike, which again, very much a product of its time, isn't it? Because that had not long opened in real life, and so everyone was building these big launched
hmm
coasters. But those buildings there in the middle with the sort of rounded little Mickey Mouse ears on the corners, I'm pretty sure I copied that off Six Frags, who was doing. I can't remember what park it would have been from, but he did a very cool sort of futuristic thing, which I was very impressed with. And there's an homage or bit of plagiarism there potentially.
I feel like back in the day, that's what everybody did. Is everybody sort of
Exactly. Yeah,
copied and pulled from different things, and
it's the
I don't
best
ever
form of
think that was a
flattery.
bad thing. It is just, yeah,
Exactly.
imitation
Everyone
is the highest form
inspiring
of
each other.
flattery.
Yeah, of course.
hmm And like you say with this Intamin coaster, this was how you had to do it back when, because we didn't have all of the different pieces we have now for the Intamin track, and we didn't have the special trains or anything like that. So we had these premier trains, and we had the B&M track, and you just jacked up the lift hill speed and made it happen.
Exactly. And this one I remember, I think it's probably fixed it in open, but in the kind of vanilla game, this used to break down like every 20 seconds because there was some. Do you remember with the trainers, if you
Mm,
switched the train type onto the wrong track, it would just become extremely unreliable and it would break down every
yep.
few seconds. So you
Mm-hmm.
had to really time it and have a little
Absolutely.
mechanic there to fix it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I loved this impulse. This was always one that, from my realism standpoint, it's, you look at it and you go, whatever. But this one always felt to me like kind of the most plausible thing that you could do if you weren't just going to do a straight line impulse coaster, like the little
Mm.
hump in the middle with the twist and everything. It just kind of felt like something you could do.
It does look fun. I'm pretty sure you would lose some limbs on this because those little tunnels are very tight. But and also, did you see it gets very alarmingly close to the top of the track at the end, which I think
Yeah, right
again,
here needs like.
oh, that's close.
You better hope the
If
wind's
that had a
not blowing
trainload of
in a
people on
certain
it, it would
way,
be
or
like,
you
oh,
don't have too
yeah,
heavy of a rider.
it would come flying off the end.
Oh,
But
uh,
this was also back in the day
it's funny
when
though.
very few people had peeps in their park. Um, and I
Mm-hmm.
noticed at the very beginning there was something's gone terribly wrong with that little square there. There's thousands of little people trapped. So I think I must have attempted to make it peepable and then not been able to resolve whatever this was, which is a shame
So I
because
was
it
looking
might
at this
be worth.
before. It is, and I was looking at this a little bit before we jumped on to do this recording today, and I was kind of messing around to see if I could easily fix it. I think it has to do with the land owned, because it
Mm,
wasn't so simple as it is now to create the peep entry point and all the things up to the actual entry signage, or the actual game entry point of the map. But I do appreciate that in this one you have actual queues, and it's all connected like you could have peeps. And I think were it not for the peep jam here in the beginning, you would have, which is a bit of a departure from how we saw a lot of new element stuff kind of way back when, because those were just built without the peeps ever in mind, like it wasn't even a consideration.
yeah, which now seems, I don't know, it seems very sad, doesn't it, when you look at some of these really old ones and they're kind of a bit devoid of atmosphere because I don't know, those little
Mm-hmm.
guys add a lot with all of their little things that they do and wandering around and actually having people on the rides and stuff. It brings quite a lot of life to it. So, I mean, the staff are there. I feel like in a way the staff make it worse. Like what are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
Just wandering around aimlessly with no guests to look after. Um, but yeah, that's
Yeah,
definitely a good thing about
it's
the more
weird.
modern stuff.
It is weird because I went back and looked at some stuff recently by like Artist, for example. Another shout out if you're watching, come on back. But it is kind of funny because it just feels very devoid of life, like you say.
Mm.
And then the staff walking around, it just makes it kind of accentuates that. But I will say I do love this haunted house with the sort of three levels here and the drop in the middle, sort of classic elements, but does it quite well.
Yeah, I remember being pleased with it, and clearly just the inside is trying to cram as much stuff in there as possible and connect all those little balconies. But this I remember is, and you probably noticed the reference, that little drop outside is definitely inspired by the one at Blackpool, um, which I'd
Mm-hmm.
probably been to fairly recently before building this. Um, it's also interesting. I quite like the this era of the aesthetic because I feel like this is when obviously there was a bunch of custom scenery available, like all those roofs. And this was when Fisherman was releasing all of these really nice kind of trim pieces. Shout out to him as well, who recently popped up out of the blue, didn't he? Um, And it's
Yeah.
nice to see that his stuff has had a real legacy. There's a lot of these pieces are still used today, um, which can't be said for a
Hmm.
lot of the early custom scenery, which looks pretty dire. Um, but yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting at this
All
time
these
because
little.
it's yeah, those things are they're still everywhere. But, yeah, it was interesting because this was just I feel like it's at the kind of transition between first we had all the kind of full tile custom bits and the colorable roofs and all of that stuff. And this was just, it looks like this is just as it was kind of transitioning into quarter tile stuff. You can see a few little quarter tile roof bits here and there, and a few of the little kind of deco blocks and
Hmm.
stuff. But they were still quite rare. But I think this area probably was done most recently, if I remember right. But it's interesting to see it's kind of
Well,
like a
it
little
is
time
an.
capsule.
Hmm. It's an interesting study in terms of what was kind of high level architecture in the game at the time, because this was what I was doing as well, and it was very much like, if you look at some of these here, it was a base, a wall, a base, a wall, a base, some kind of a roof parapet detail, and then sometimes it got filled in with these little plus wood pieces and everything, and
Mhm.
then you sometimes made your first floor a little bit higher so you could put these awnings on it, and then you just layered the whole thing on the outside of the tile with whatever kind of fisherman Victorian detail or these different windows. And these windows, these MKX window or MXK windows, were the style of the time for sure.
Oh
And actually,
yeah.
if we go over and look at the hotel, you can
Oh
see
yeah.
that in a very
I
clear
was
way.
obsessed with those windows. As you can see.
Well, and this right here, this is a it feels like this is almost another step forward, because now you have the very descriptive, base of a texture, the main section of a texture with these walls and everything, and that, nicely detailed in kind of that verticality way, and then you have the roof, so very much Chicago skyscraper style of building, and from an architectural point of view, which is seems to me as a step forward from kind of this stuff, which still sort
Mm.
of dominated the inside the park scene for a while.
Yeah, you're right. I remember another name from the distant past, Marshy, who was, I think he did a couple of duos with Metropole.
Mhm.
They were a pair that I really looked up to and tried to sort of emulate a lot of their stuff. And I remember he did a sort of beginner's architecture tutorial on RCT2.com, and his his technique was, I was like, so you do a base and then a wall and then a base and then a wall and then you layer your windows and layer your little deco bits. So you can see I was following that quite religiously, which again is it
It
doesn't
is funny.
necessarily, yeah, that's not necessarily how real buildings work. These kind of stripes, or at least not to the extreme level where you'd have sort of a random wooden horizontal layer in the middle of your plaster building or something.
Well, it's interesting because it actually raises a good point about how styles can be in the game, especially, can be carried through and really kind of propagated just from a single tutorial like that. And that's kind of why I think, at least on New Element these days, I feel like we kind of shy away from doing architectural tutorials or things like that, because you do one suggestion, and then if it looks kind of good, everybody says, "Ah, that's great," and then everybody sort of takes hold and just builds their own thing, all based on that same sort of thing. So then all the stuff looks the
Mm.
same. You pop open my Crystal Springs Oasis, and this building could have come right out of that one, because I was probably in this park copying it.
Yeah, there is a danger with that, isn't it? That everything becomes a little homogenous if there's too many trends. And also, it tends to date it a lot, doesn't it? Because you're like, oh, this was clearly built in
Hmm.
that era when everyone was doing this. Um, so yeah, again, it's
Hmm.
nice that these days people have a bit more freedom, and there's definitely a lot more variety of styles, I think, out there now. I'm sure there's still a lot of people inspiring
Yeah.
each other and people kind of riffing off each other's styles, but there's a lot more options.
Yeah, I
I've
think
forgotten there was a water
the
park in
strategy
here.
doesn't really change.
I don't really
Well,
remember
that
adding this
was
part. That's a nice surprise.
it was again the style of the time, wasn't it? That we didn't really have the hacking to make it go, but we did have the ability to at least make it look okay. And since peeps weren't really a main focus, the water park was the thing. Like I feel like
Mm.
a lot of the parks from this age had the theme park, then it had the water park that was sort of devoid of anything except for just looking like it could have some fun stuff in it, and then there was always the hotel as well. So it is kind of fun to look at this and think through because we were just getting these water pieces, I think, some of these
Mm.
whitewater elements. So now you got your little wave pool and your gigantic slide complex.
Yeah. No, this
It's
is,
a
oh,
big
what's,
drop.
oh no, it's some steam over on there. I thought there was a person wandering around there, but it's no, it's some little animated steam pieces. But no, this is
On the
I
1K
noticed that there's a
fog.
little yeah, the 1K fog, yeah, iconic piece. And you can see his jacuzzi of horror. That's a foreshadowing of Zippo's the sort of signs with weird kind of very
Did you
macabre.
jump into Zippo's? Did you jump into Zippo's immediately after this one?
No, no, that was I don't remember what happened in between because Zippo's was like 2009. I must have done a bunch of stuff in between, but who knows what happened to it all. Oh, that's also a bit of a foreshadowing of Zippo's, isn't it? With the pipes coming out of the toilets into the otherwise clean water.
Love it. No, I feel like there was a lot of those sort of this sort of filled in for the naming staff weird things like we do now with
Mhm.
sort of the different storyline elements and everything. I mean that still happened even back then, but you had all these sort of little tropes like this and the sign that you actually using the signs because I feel like we don't really use the standard 3D sign or the scrolling
Mm.
sign any longer. Uh, those are classics.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've ever seen a sign like that in real life with a sort of wooden beams, but with a sort of LED sign scrolling across it.
It always struck me as odd when in RCT, and I understand that's the best way to represent it, I suppose, but it always kind of struck me as odd that all of the queues and the exit huts and the entrance huts and all of the things had these like LED scrolling signs all around. I'm like, man, this is a fancy little park to afford
Yeah,
that kind of
look at
stuff,
the electricity bill. It would be through the roof.
right? Well, no wonder no one's here. The parking lot's empty.
Oh, must be on a an off-season day.
Must be. They're just all on this one square, apparently.
They're having a little mosh pit down there.
Right? That's good. No,
Um,
it is fun and nostalgic to look back at this because I think it's for me this was what I grew up with in the game and this is what sort of formed my thoughts about custom scenery and park building and all that kind of thing at the time and in a lot of ways it still is a really good metric for how to build and how to form areas and how to work your natural landscaping through spaces like this river that kind of works its way through this whole thing. So it all has a a time and a place and I think it's still really valid to come back and look at this kind of stuff because I really enjoyed some of the scenes that were set up and like this cool waterfall coming off and very much terrain right to this hill but at the same time it has a cool vibe to it. It's just fun to look back at and it's neat to kind of see where we were before and kind of how far we've come now.
that's yeah, a very good point. It's a nice trip down memory lane. And yeah, so you're right. Some of this stuff would still, I don't know, with a bit of polishing, especially flattening and smoothing down some of that landscape, removing some of the random artifacts from the bushes. Um, I think it could. Some of this stuff could still be decent in today's way of doing things.
Yeah, I think so. It definitely has some core park building elements to it. And that's always the thing for me, is that it, in the end you want the basics of design, and a lot of those things don't really change. I mean, thinking about views and thinking about,
Hmm.
different setups, like this great view of this helix as our carousel spins out of control.
That's unfortunate.
There it goes. This mechanic doesn't seem too concerned. T. Mary Mech. Did you name the rest of your staff?
Oh, I did.
Huh.
Are they in? Oh, those must be
Oh,
the
so
names
they,
of
they
the
each have
areas.
areas. Look at that. There's
Oh,
you.
oh, I'm in it. Oh, these are the folks
Here we
from
go.
is that RCT Innovation?
All right. So yeah. So we still
Oh,
have. Let's see. Kumba's still around. Six Frags. Steve. All
I
right.
forgot Steve used to
Couple
be
couple
Steve
folks still
Portugal.
hanging in there.
Yeah, I
Is that the same Steve?
think so. We can check.
I'll have to ask.
That's a
Yeah, we'll
good
have to
little
check.
roll call of who we need to
That's
bring
funny.
back as well. Let's track them down.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I'll have to go get these folks. If you're watching, come back to New Element.
Uh,
Ah. So this is kind of, it's just a fun. Oh, you know what? I didn't even look at this. The
oh,
second resort over here
oh,
where
there's
we have our
tennis
fancy
courts,
tennis
aren't
courts.
they? Very.
What is
Oh, what's happened to
this?
the
I don't know
walls?
what's going on the inside.
Is this?
It's different.
Oh yeah,
Ah,
look,
okay.
yeah, it's
Here it is.
RT.
RCTI. So RCT Innovation.
Well, that's our private resort, which has been violently cut off at the sides. No, no classic cutaway. It's it's collapsed off the map edge.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Uh, I did the RCT clubs. It's another time capsule thing. The RCT clubs.
Yeah.
I was in RC. I wasn't good enough to get into like innovation at the time, and I wasn't active enough. So like, I think I was RCT Conquistadors, which was a
I
thing,
remember them.
and
I remember
yeah,
Conquistadors.
RCT Fury after that, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, that was very much of its time as well. I suppose that was when
But I don't feel
there was more
like
people.
there was, but I don't ever feel like any of the clubs did a whole heck of a lot. Like there was maybe one or two group parks that ever came up, but it was always more of just sort of that status symbol than
Yes.
anything productive. I feel like.
No, I tend to agree. I remember being absolutely over the moon when I remember applying to be in RCT Innovation and like treating it like a job application, sending in a little letter, be like, please have me. I would be good because of ABC reasons. And they said yes, and I was absolutely over the moon, which is cute, little sort of
Amazing,
teenager
isn't it?
me. Yeah.
Right? It's shaped us growing up. It was a good time.
Yeah.
But you're back now. So you
Yeah.
just released a new little custom or no custom scenery thing that kind of had some nice like classic vibes to it. But what else do you have coming?
Well, yeah, I recently delved into open RCT2 as of sort of Christmas time. I finally had some time and thought, right, I'll actually download it and get back into this. And there was a lot to catch up on. But yeah, after tinkering around with a few different things, I've started this new park based on a sort of imaginary park up in the Cairngorm Mountains of Scotland. So yeah, I've been sharing a few screenshots of that on New Element, called Craigmore, which is Gaelic for Big Rocky Hill, which we tend to name all of our mountains up here very sort of practical, descriptive names, but when you translate it into Gaelic, it sounds quite mystical. So yeah, Craigmore, which is quite small, but it has kind of ballooned into quite the project. So I started it on quite a big map, and I have now decided to try and fill in all of the surroundings, which so I'm trying to get to grips with
Oh,
doing all of the kind of modern way of doing roads and all of this stuff, which is a lot more involved than little car park that was there in Billerica Bay with just like one piece for representing the lines. So it might be a little
Right?
while before that's
You
finished.
gotta get with the times, all the crunch and
Exactly.
everything. I think the biggest
Crunch is-
detriment to finishing stuff is being able to change the map size now.
Yeah,
Like you're never actually done if you don't want to be.
exactly. Yeah, you just keep going and going. What the problem I've had is that I probably would quite happily add some more, but I very much built myself into a corner because it's on a hill, so it butts up against a cliff, and I've built stuff all around the edges. But I think I'll try and use that as an incentive to try and keep it somewhat manageable, and try and finish it and then move on to something else. Because yeah, the I feel like I never actually released that much stuff over the years. There was this, and then there was Zippos. There was a Canyoneer. That was fun. Um, yeah,
The
there
Christmas
was a lot of
park.
other
I
stuff
always
in
like that one.
progress that just.
I copied the hell out of the Christmas park.
Oh yeah, that was a very similar era to this, if I remember. Very similar
Mm-hmm.
style with just like let's
Mm-hmm.
spam stuff on every tile. Um, But yeah, I think the biggest impediment to finishing stuff is, yeah, the as the level of detail increases, it just becomes all the more time consuming. Um, but
It
then there's no rush,
does.
I suppose, is there? It's something to keep us out of trouble.
We've already been going for 20 years. What's another 20 more, right?
Yeah, exactly. Problem is that, well, the other danger nowadays, I think, is that it's so easy to update all of the objects and everything. And like you say, even the map size and everything. So if someone releases some new stuff, you're like, oh, I'll just add that. Whereas back in the day, that was a lot more involved. Um, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does become tempting to constantly redo stuff, and never actually call it finished. So yeah, there's a bit of a balancing act, isn't there, between wanting to keep iterating on something versus actually just drawing a line under it and saying, right, this will do. It's done enough. Let's move on to something else. Because otherwise, it's
Mm-hmm.
nice that when things actually get released, the amount of unfinished projects that there must be over the years is unreal. Um, so yeah, I will
Yeah,
try to
just
finish
the
some stuff.
finishing has gotten harder and harder.
It really has, but now I'm hoping to
Well,
finish this new one.
we hope to see that soon.
Yeah, watch this space. Not going to be particularly soon, but less than 20 years, I hope.
Fingers crossed. Well, I think this was a good look back and some good nostalgia for the new folks. This might be a little bit lost on some, but hopefully it's a good picture back into the world that was, as it were, I guess,
Yeah,
and where we all came from. Thank you for
exactly.
joining.
Some cultural education for the newcomers.
Exactly. So, if you guys would like to download this park, I will put a download link in the description of this video, and you can check it out. You do not need OpenRCT2 to view this one, which is sort of a rarity these days. You can view this one on regular old RCT if anybody's still not using Open. But thank you very much to Xophe for joining us today, and hopefully we'll be looking at his new park here coming up soon. So, until next time, thank you all very much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. See you.